Jai.
Jai.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakaracharya Stotra Satashishi Mad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Maya
Jai.
Dham Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Bol.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, Text 10. Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. Others chant, please.
Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta para purusham param.
Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udharati, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Akama sarva karma va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham param.
Hare Krishna. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena jajeta purusham param. Hare Krishna.
Kama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param.
Okay, word for word translation. Akama, one who has transcended all material desires. Sarvakama, one who has the sum total of material desires. Va, either. Mokshakama, one who desires liberation. Udaradi, with broader intelligence. Tivrena, with great force. Bhakti yogena, by devotional service to the Lord. Yajeta, should worship. Purusham, the Lord. Param, the supreme whole. Translation. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is he alone who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahmajyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahmajyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the supreme impersonal Brahmajyoti must also worship the Lord by bhakti yoga, as recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal of both karma yoga and jnana yoga. And in the same way, in this chapter, it is emphatically declared that bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal of the different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of bhakti yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. A kama is one who has no material desires. A living being, naturally being the part and parcel of the supreme whole Purusham Purnam, has as its natural function to serve the supreme being, just as the parts and parcels of the body or the limbs of the body are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like the stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this desirelessness as Bhajaniya Parama Purusha Sukha Matra Sasukha Tvam in his Sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This intuition of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of the living being in the material world. And such intuition is expressed in the manner of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, etc., by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such an outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a pure living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Rajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis loved the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the akama spirit. Kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of akama is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or being merged in the Brahmajyoti can also be exhibitions of kama spirit if they are desires for one's own satisfaction to be free from the material miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee is aspirant for the satisfaction of the Lord. Influenced by the kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus he became akama. That is the perfect stage of a perfect living being. Udaradi means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 20, as Hrita Jnana, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that the ultimate authority is the Lord, even for material benefits. Under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. And everyone, whether in akama or sakama or mokshakama, should worship the Lord with great expedience. This implies that bhakti yoga must be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana. As the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called tivra, similarly, unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc., may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. This is a famous verse, a well-known verse, and a very important verse. And it's this and I suppose the next verse also are sort of concluding, in a way, Shukadev Goswami's whole analysis from starting with the beginning of this chapter about the different paths of karma and yoga and meditation and Ashtanga yoga and how they relate to bhakti yoga. And it's all being really concluded here very nicely. The conclusion, one of the conclusions, is that this path of bhakti yoga is for everyone. Whatever you want to obtain, you need to approach Krishna for it. From the purport, second line only, Prabhupada writes, it is he only who can award liberation to the impersonalist by absorbing such aspirants in his Brahma Jyoti, all coming from Krishna. So whatever we want, or whatever a gross materialist sarva kama wants, or whatever an impersonalist or liberationist moksha kama wants, has to be done by approaching Krishna. And Prabhupada, in the purport supporting this, he quotes this very interesting verse from Srila Jiva Goswami's Sandarbha, that bhajaniya parama purusha sukha matra sasukha tvam. Bhajaniya parama purusha, worshipping of parama purusha, same words as today, parama purusha or purusham param. Sukha matra. Matra means the object or the totality or sum or totality of all things. So bhajaniya parama purusha sukha matra, that worshiping Krishna in order to give pleasure to Krishna, who is the source and the origin and the totality of all things. What's the Isha Upanishad? Om Purnam Adak Purnamidam. He is the source and the totality of all existence. So bhajaniya, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to provide his pleasure, sukhamatra swasukhatvam. That is swasukhatam. That is one's own pleasure. Also, at the very end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, I don't have it in front of me, but when Prabhupada is discussed, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining the Sikshashtakam, and there's a very nice verse in that explanation, and Prabhupada in the purport quotes from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta saying, because the idea is that Radharani is saying, oh, Krishna, you may neglect me, you may not be present before me, but still, I'm your devoted servant unconditionally. So Prabhupada quotes Bhakti Siddhanta as saying that a devotee has no way of perceiving happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy. That's a paraphrase, not the exact words, but it's pretty close. That a devotee cannot even conceive of happiness except by Krishna's happiness. So whatever one wants, that comes through worshiping Krishna. In this verse, akama sarva kamo va, this word va has many different usages, very different meanings according to how it's used. I looked this up both in the Sanskrit dictionary and also if you look in the Bhagavatam, in the Veda base, you can see how Prabhupada translates this word va, and it has different meanings. Here he says either in the word-for-word translation and or in the running translation, that akama, the devotees who are free of all material desires, sarva kama, the materialists who are full of all material desires, va, or the liberationists who are desiring liberation, who want moksha. All of them have to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the straightforward and common and entirely correct understanding that whatever type of person, and these three groupings more or less encompass every living being in the universe. There's the devotees, there's the materialists who want sense gratification, and the liberationists, usually impersonalists, who want freedom from material life. So just like you say A, B, or C. So all three of them equally, all of them need to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because Tivrena, because the process of Bhakti Yoga is the most powerful, the most purifying. Tivra means like that, something very powerful, very strong, forceful, very intense, or even very hot. And Prabhupada would often link this word Tivra with the concept of the sun. And in Sanskrit, sometimes the sun is called Tivra Duty. We know this word duty, that like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse, that Radha Bhava duty. Duty means the effulgence. So Tivra duty means the sun because it has the most powerful effulgent rays coming from it. So this is Bhakti Yoga. It's the most powerful thing, the most amazing thing. Therefore, anyone, the devotees, of course, the devotees, but even the materialists who simply want to gratify their senses, and even the yogis and jnanis who simply want liberation, all of them, yajeta purusham pram, they must worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead if they want to attain their goal. And if they don't worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means that their intelligence is very narrow, is very, Prabhupada would use this expression that there's the broad-minded and there's the cripple-minded. He would sometimes say the Brahmana is supposed to be the broad-minded one. So there's broad-minded and cripple-minded. And udaradi means that broad-minded person. Udara means liberal or generous. So a generous person is very broad-minded. An intelligent person is supposed to be broad-minded. That broad-minded person whose intelligence is sufficiently developed, sufficiently cultivated to understand that, okay, I'm lusty, I want to gratify my senses in the material world, but still I have to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That person, despite maybe being a lusty dog, has, at least in one sense, has that broad intelligence. And if someone thinks I want to be a jnani, I want to be a yogi, but I know that in order to be successful at that, I need to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That person has broad intelligence. But if you forget Krishna and think, oh, let me just work hard like an ass and gratify my senses or manipulate people or get, wealth, money, followers, whatever, by my own power, then this is crippled intelligence. This is very narrow, very limited intelligence, the opposite of udaradi. So a person needs to, and what to speak of the devotees, also we need to understand always understanding and always reminding ourselves and always refining our understanding that what we're doing is for the pleasure of Krishna. Because even in acts of devotional service, it's possible to forget that. So we have to be careful not to become cripple-minded in our devotional service. So this is why bhakti yoga is the highest path, not just the highest path, it's the only path. It's the only actual universal path. And this verse states that it's open to everyone. It's open to the devotees, and it's open to those also who are maybe very materially entangled. It's open to them also. And it's open also to the jnanis, to the yogis. They can also take advantage of it. So this is the eligibility and the availability of devotional service. And this is discussed in Nectar of Devotion and by Srila Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's the chapter in Nectar of Devotion about the eligibility of the candidate for devotional service. At that point, actually speaking about the eligibility of a person to take up beginning devotional service, Vaidhi Bhakti. So in discussing that, first Srila Rupa Goswami defines what is Vaidhi Bhakti. And he defines it, actually there's many verses, but in one verse he says Vaidhi Bhakti means following the rules of scripture that are Harim Udishya. Harim Udishya means that which has Lord Hari as its goal. So there's many, the Vedas are so vast. And what to speak of Vedas, scriptures, and other religious traditions, so vast, but we are concerned with those that actually explicitly have Lord Hari as their goal. This is Vaidhi Bhakti. This is the beginning of Vaidhi Bhakti. And who is the person? Who is the aspirant who is actually qualified to take this up? Excuse me. Srila Rupa Goswami mentions one most important quality, that the qualification for someone to take up this path of devotional service is faith. That if one simply has faith, and what is faith? Faith is the same thing as this udaradi. That means when you understand, yes, there's something more that I'm trying to gratify my senses, but I need to approach Krishna for that. Or I'm pursuing liberation, but I need to also approach Krishna from that. When you have that faith, that understanding, that qualifies a person to take to the path of devotional service in the beginning. And the secondary qualification, which is actually quite interesting, is that aside from having sufficient faith to take it up, Srila Rupa Goswami also says that one should be not too materially attached and not too materially renounced either. Let's see. Yes, not too materially attached and not too materially renounced. Because if someone is too materially attached, this is the sarvakama. That if they're too much absorbed in gratifying their senses, then it'll be very difficult, nearly impossible for them to have that udaradi that allows them to see past their sense gratification, to understand that I also need to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if someone is too renounced, that means that their heart has become hard like a stone, and they've given up personalism and given up all hope of love and relationship and service, which in turn makes it very difficult for them to accept Krishna as the object of their worship. So in that way, although devotional service is available to the materialists and the impersonalists and the yogis and jnanis, but if either of them are too much absorbed in their path, it's very difficult for them. This is also let's see. This is also described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that also. That let's see. The qualified person. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the Nectar of Devotion verse. Yakena yati bhagyena jata shrado sasevane nati sakto navairagya bhagasyam adikarya. So that to take to devotional service, that person has to have great fortune, ati bhagyena, jata shraddha, and that great fortune is jata shraddha, the birth or the appearance of faith. And Rupa Goswami also describes what is that ati bhagya, what is that great fortune? That comes from past association with devotees, past performance of devotional service, and the mercy of the devotees. So it comes from past qualification, and or it comes from the special mercy of a devotee, even if you have no past qualification. From that, faith appears in your heart, and that makes you qualified. Nati sakto na vairagya. Nati sakto, not overly attached, and na vairagya, not overly detached. That is adhikari. That is the adhikari that makes someone qualified, or qualified to take the devotional service, because adhikari means qualified or qualification. Krishna also explains the same thing in the Uddhava Gita, which I've been looking at lately. In there, Krishna explains to Arjuna that actually there's only three paths in life: the path of the karmi, the path of the jnani, and the path of the devotee. Just like in today's verse, the three options are akama, sarva kama, va moksha kama. He says there's only these three paths, and the path of karma or material advancement is for those who are too much attached, and the path of jnana is for those who are too much renounced or too much impersonal. So an intelligent person threads the needle, so to speak, between these two extremes, that you can't be too attached that you're just like an animal gratifying your senses. You need to have a little bit of broader intelligence to see that Krishna is there. And you can't be so renounced like the Mayavadis. Prabhupada would always criticize the Mayavadis for this reason, because they either deny the existence or they claim that the appearance of Krishna is a material phenomena. That's a case of being too renounced, that by that offense, you can no longer approach Krishna. So udaradi means threading the needle between these extremes, too renounced and too attached. And in that Uddhava Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, if somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person being neither disgusted with nor very much attached to material life should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me, which is echoing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's same words in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that qualification comes adhikari. Rupa Goswami also describes three adhikaris, or 3 degrees of this adhikari. The adhikari is there, one's knowledge of Krishna and one's faith in Krishna. So these are the 3 adhikaris. Kanishta adhikari. Kanishta adhikari is qualified to enter devotional service because he has that faith and that understanding of Krishna, but his faith is very weak and his knowledge is very weak. And therefore, because of that, although he's qualified to take up Vaidhi Bhakti, he has a tendency to be diverted because his faith is not strong, his knowledge is not strong. Above the Kanishta Adhikari is the Madhyama Adhikari, middle qualified. That person, his faith is strong, but his knowledge may still not yet be up to snuff, up to the an adequate level. But because his faith is strong, that even if he doesn't understand everything, and even if someone defeats him in a debate, He still has faith in Krishna and he won't be shaken from that. And then there's the Uttama Adhikari, which is the topmost Adhikari. And this is also talking about the qualifications of a person who is just starting, who is just qualified to start the path of Vaidhi Bhakti. So this Uttama Adhikari means he's just starting, but his qualification is that his faith is very strong and also his knowledge is very strong. So that's the most qualified person. But all of them are qualified to start devotional service if they have at least a touch of faith and a touch of understanding of Krishna. So that's akama sarva kamova moksha kama, that the devotees, the karmis, and the jnanis, or the jnanis, can all and should all approach Krishna. Now, there's another meaning I said earlier about this Sanskrit word va also has other meanings. Va also means even. So another understanding of this verse is, and again, I've gotten this from other translations of the word va in Prabhupada's books, where it's translated like this, and also from the Monier Williams Sanskrit Dictionary. Va means even. So another understanding is akama, sarva kama va moksha kama, that the devotees can and must take to devotional service. Sarva kama, the materialists, can and must take to devotional service. And even moksha kama, even the impersonalists and liberationists and jnanis and yogis can take the devotional service. Just like if you have a group of people and you're giving them a duty and you say, yes, you can all do it. Tom can do it, and Mary can do it, and George can do it, and even Richard can do it. So when you're saying even Richard can do it, you're saying he can do it, but you're also sort of alluding to the fact that Richard is the least qualified of all, isn't it? You said even you can do it. It's like you say, oh, it's so simple, even you can do it, or it's so simple, even a fool can do it. So this is another meaning of sarva akama, sarva kamova, moksha kama. That means the devotees can do it, the materialists can do it, and even the impersonalist yogi meditators can do it, because the yogi meditators are the most unqualified. Being material attached is certainly a disqualification, but it's not as grossly offensive as the impersonalists who neglect Krishna or relegate Krishna's existence to a material phenomena or to consider him mundane. This is the most offensive of all. Therefore, even the impersonalists, because they're the least qualified, the yogis are the least qualified because of this attitude. Mayavadi Bhashya Suni Le Hai Sarvanash. That this Mayavadi Bhashya, this understanding, this conclusion of the impersonalist is so dangerous and so deadly. Sarvanash completely destroys everything. But even them, if they udaradi, if they get a little bit of intelligence, broadening a little bit and thinking, oh, just like the four Kumaras, right? They weren't offensive, but they were absorbed in impersonal realization. But then by the aroma of the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet, their intelligence was broadened. And they understood, yes, we have to worship Krishna. So this is another meaning of that the impersonalists are the most unqualified, but even they, if they give up their offense and broaden their intelligence a little bit, udaradi, that Krishna is not impersonal, Krishna is not material, Krishna is not mythical, whatever. Krishna is just like another habit of the Mayavadis is to, in the Mayavadi ashrams of Shankara, they all do deity worship, sometimes of Krishna, sometimes of this demigod, that demigod. But even when they worship someone, they say, oh, this is just temporary path of sadhana, and then we give it up. So this is very offensive. But if they understand, no, it's not something to be given up, but this is actually the method, then they're also able to yajate the purusham param in advance. So this is another meaning of va. And another meaning of va also means like. And the previous interpretation of va, that was my own speculation for what it's worth. But this analysis is from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, and he says va means like. So akama, sarva kama, va, moksha kama means that he's describing not three groups, but he's sort of describing two groups. Akama, the devotees, and the second group is sarva kama va moksha kama, those who are completely saturated with kama, like the impersonalists. So in other words, he's saying that the impersonalists are actually the lustiest of all. That the impersonalists, who are supposed to be freed of all material desires, they're the lustiest of all, because they're desiring the topmost thing that they can conceive of. They're desiring to be God himself, to be the Lord of everything, or to annihilate or to negate the entire world. So that doesn't mean they're free of material desires. It means that they're the lustiest of all, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains. So in any case, and why that's one of the reasons Prabhupada came here, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine, to deliver us from impersonalism and voidism, because it's the most destructive thing. Again, being a materialist is a disqualification, and being lusty, sarvakama, is a disqualification. But being directly offensive to Krishna through this impersonal philosophy is a far greater obstacle. So anyway, taking all this into account, the point still stands that whoever you are, whatever you are, whatever stage you are, whatever belief you are, the only option is worshiping Krishna, to get those other things you want, even if you want material gratification, even if you want liberation. The only way to get it is by Krishna, by worshiping Krishna. That's the only source of your own happiness. Again, bhajaniya parama purusha sukha matra swasukha tvam. This is the only source of one's own happiness. And of course, if a person takes that idea, even if they're full of material desires, even if they're after liberation, they will then be able to progress and elevate themselves. Just like Dhruva Maharaj came for material desires, but he became purified and said, "Oh, Krishna, I was looking for useless broken pieces of glass, but instead I found the most perfect jewel." And Prabhupada also, and many acharyas in different places also give the example of Gajendra, who is in a terrible situation. This is Artartarti, Jnani, and Jigyasi, yes? That Gajendra, he was in a terrible suffering situation of danger. Therefore, he approached the Lord, and the Lord delivered him from that danger. And then Gajendra's devotion was completely purified, and he returned back to Godhead. And other examples are the four Kumaras, who I mentioned earlier, and the Jigyasis were like the sages at Naimisharanya, who started off with a mundane sacrifice. But then when they heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta, then they were again elevated to the position of pure devotee. So this is Tivrena. This is the amazing power of devotional service. So this is some of the point of this verse that we can understand from this verse, that the path of bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is necessary and sufficient for attaining whatever one desires in this material world. Anything you desire, all that's necessary is worshiping Krishna. And when you do that, worshiping Krishna, you'll become purified, and then you'll become freed of the desire for material things. And you'll become freed for the desire for liberation and impersonal realization. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam. Then this is pure devotional service. You start off not pure, but when you give up those desires for material things, and you give up that desire for liberation, yogic cities, meditation, and such things, then you've actually understood devotional service. So this is devotional service. It's the most powerful and the only and wonderful, important, valuable thing. It's the only universal principle, because we're universally, all of us, everything, are part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, devotional service is the only universal principle, which means, and devotional service means living and experiencing and practicing and then realizing our actual relationship with Krishna. And the other point of this verse is that devotional service is simultaneously the most exclusive thing and the most inclusive thing. It's inclusive because it's available for everyone. You're a karmi, you're a jnani, it doesn't matter. You take to devotional service. And it's also the most exclusive thing because inherent in this description is that the akamis, the devotees who have no material desire, who are only concerned with pleasing Krishna, they are the best of all. So it's simultaneously inclusive and simultaneously exclusive. Exclusive because actually to fully reap the fruits of devotional service, which is prema pamartha mahan, one needs to be akami. You have to, again, anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavirtam. You have to give up the material desires. You have to give up the impersonal conception. You have to give up all these other things and become akami, or nishkami is the other word, same thing, free of material desires. Prabhupada explains that free of desires doesn't mean that you're dull like a stone with no desires. That's not desirable, nor is it even possible. And he explains how that is in the purport today very nicely. But nishkama means free of material desires because all of your desires are focused on pleasing Krishna. Again, bhajaniya, parama purusha, sukha macha swasukatvam. Because you've understood that Krishna's pleasure is my pleasure. Because I'm part and parcel of Krishna, it's natural. The story of the body and the senses, I think Prabhupada alluded to it in the purport, the story of the body and the senses, which Prabhupada would tell often. It's also present in Shakespeare has also told this story, that all of the senses are saying, oh, why should we serve the stomach? The hands and the brain and the eyes and the legs are saying, why serve the stomach? All we do, we walk around, we find some food, we put it in the mouth, and it all goes to the stomach. Why should it go to the stomach? Let it go to me. So all of the senses go on strike and stop feeding the stomach. And what happens? The hands become weak. The legs become shaky. The eyes become blurred vision. All the senses and all the body becomes weakened. And then they realized, yes, by giving food to the stomach, the entire body becomes nourished. The other example, the Vedic example, is Yata Taror Mula. I can't, again, another verse I don't really know. I just remember a few words that that by watering the root of the tree, then the entire tree is hydrated, the entire tree is nourished. But if you go with a dropper, an eyedropper or medicine dropper, here's a drop of water on this leaf, a drop of water on this leaf, on this branch, on this twig. Not only you can't do it, but even if you could do it, it won't nourish the tree. You need to pour it on the root. Krishna is the root, and we are automatically our happiness, our full nourishment is there by serving Krishna. And if you neglect that, then that satisfaction will never come. Also echoing today's Bhagavatam verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataeva Shanta. That Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami, again this word kami, one who has desires for bhukti, for material enjoyment, for mukti, for liberation, siddhi, for yogic perfections, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, sakali, ashanta, all of them cannot attain peace. None of those can attain peace. Again, why? Again, because referring to today's verse, Their intelligence is too narrow. They have not attained this stage of udaradi, of approaching Krishna. But Krishna Bhakta Nishkama, the Krishna Bhakta who is completely freed of all material desires, not because he's negated desire, but because he's turned and focused all his desire on Krishna, Atayeva Shanti. He attains complete peace, complete perfection, complete liberation. He attains everything that the Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami is aspiring for but can't get. And ultimately, he gets love of Krishna and returning back home, back to Godhead. So this is the lesson that Krishna Bhakti is the most confidential. We've also, a couple of weeks ago, we heard in the Sunday Feast lecture about the most confidential knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna Bhakti is the most confidential thing. Raja Vidyam, Raja Guyam. It's the greatest secret. So it's very secret, it's very select, it's very exclusive. But at the same time, it's inclusive. Everyone take it. You lusty karmis, you people who just want to gratify your senses, worship Krishna. You yogis and meditators and jnanis, you want something, just worship Krishna. And we're saying to the whole population of Philadelphia and the population of the world, take to this Krishna consciousness. It's the most secret thing, but it's the open secret that all you have to do, and again, going back to Nectar of Devotion, all you need is a little bit of faith that I'm part and parcel of Krishna, that Krishna is supreme, that material life and liberation are not suitable goals of life. So this is the understanding of the devotee, that the devotee understands that Krishna consciousness is the most valuable, like the most precious jewel and the most secret and confidential thing. And at the same time, he wants to distribute that to everyone. So a devotee needs that intelligence, how to protect and maintain the perfection and the purity of Krishna consciousness without changing it, without watering it down, without using it to try to please the senses of ordinary people, to keep its purity completely intact, and at the same time make it available and make it attractive to everyone. This is the art of preaching. And this was Prabhupada's expertise. He took Krishna consciousness from India, from Vrindavan, and brought it here. And he made adjustments, but he kept the purity and the essence and even much of the cultural aspects of Krishna consciousness completely intact, and presented it in a way that makes it available and so attractive, so beautiful. He excised much of the casteism and smartaism and the excessive jnana and so many things that are different accoutrements of Vedic knowledge and Indian culture. And he brought this beautiful, perfect, pure message, but he kept the focus and he kept the identity of Krishna consciousness so pure. He didn't compromise that even a bit. When Prabhupada started this movement, actually even before he legally started it, he had invented this name, ISKCON, this acronym, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So this is a little story from the Lilamrita, short section. This is from Planting the Seed. We shall call our society ISKCON. Prabhupada had laughed playfully when he first coined the acronym. He had initiated the legal work of incorporation that spring while still living on the Bowery. But even before its legal beginning, he had been talking about his, quote, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, unquote. And so it had appeared in letters to India and in the Village Voice. So this is me interrupting now, that even before ISKCON was founded, he had this name, ISKCON, and this conception, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that which he was using even before it was legally established. Continuing, a friend had suggested a title that would sound more familiar to Westerners, International Society for God Consciousness. But Prabhupada had insisted, Krishna consciousness. God was a vague term. whereas Krishna was exact and scientific. God consciousness was spiritually weaker, less personal. And if Westerners didn't know that Krishna was God, then the International Society for Krishna Consciousness would tell them by spreading his glories, quote, in every town and village, unquote. So this is just a little story, but about how Prabhupada, he insisted on keeping the purity and the tradition and the culture and the essence of Krishna consciousness. In one sense, there's no difference between Krishna consciousness and God consciousness. But when you say God, and Prabhupada will also say, you say God consciousness, people will put forward so many gods. But if you say Krishna consciousness, you have to accept Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the whole Vedic knowledge and the whole practice of Bhakti Yoga springs from that understanding. Ete cham sakala pumsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That's why that verse is considered the technical Sanskrit term escapes me, but it's called, like, it's the essential verse of Bhagavatam that establishes the philosophical basis for the entire 12 cantos. This one verse, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we keep that intact, the specificity, the purity, the essence of Krishna consciousness. We don't water it down. Prabhupada also said that if I didn't insist on these 4 regular principles, I could have attracted so many more people, so many cheap followers, if I didn't insist on this no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. I could have attracted more people, but he kept the purity of it. Same thing with, and so many things. There's so many instances where a preacher has to understand this, how to simultaneously understand and appreciate and convey the specificity and the exclusivity of devotional service, but at the same time do it in a way that makes it available to each and every single person. This is the challenge of the preacher. And of course, in Krishna consciousness, all contradictions are resolved. That if you understand Krishna and you have that intelligence and you have that preaching spirit, then you can do that. You can convey that Krishna consciousness is simultaneously the greatest secret and the greatest opportunity for the entire world, the entire creation. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. If there's any questions or comments, we can discuss now. Anything? Going once, going twice? Okay, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful class, Prabhu. It was very enlightening. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your kind comment, Mataji. Anything?
Thank you,
Question or
thank you,
comment?
Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. It was a very nice class as well.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Okay, everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
I had a comment, Haribol.
Oh, how do you jump into this conversation? Yeah, Hare Krishna, go ahead.
I was going to say, but somebody was knocking at my door. The last minute, the last bit, you were saying about the source of all incarnation. What were you talking about? Is it the Mahavakya verse?
Yeah, is that the term? Yeah, maybe I forgot the term, the Mahavakya.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the term, yes. Thank you.
So what were you saying about, can you just tell one, I didn't miss that last part.
Oh, I was just saying that we need to keep the purity and specificity of Krishna consciousness intact, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, and not water it down. Just like maybe you didn't hear it, I told how when Prabhupada started this movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, some people said, oh, why don't you call it International Society for God Consciousness? The Westerners will like it better. But he insisted, no, Krishna. So that was the point I was making.
Yeah, about I heard the example of the watering the tree.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the root goes, okay. Yes, that was the last part I wanted to hear. And then, yeah, that's basically I wanted to know because I missed that one. Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, see you next week. Anyone else? Thank you very much for your kind attention. Vanchakalpa through Vyascha, Kripasindubhya,
Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Everyone have a nice